Welcome back to Empowered and Out, the career coaching podcast, the show where we have honest conversations about career confidence, purpose, authenticity, leadership, and creating a life that actually feels aligned of who you are. I'm your host, Coach John, career transformation and confidence coach. And today we're heading halfway around the world for a conversation I have been looking forward to. So joining me today is Malcolm Chen, an investor relations manager with more than 20 years of experience across human resources, marketing, communications, hospitality, education, and capital markets. But Malcolm's story goes far beyond a corporate resume. He's also an entrepreneur, career advisor, community builder, passionate advocate for helping people create meaningful lives, and perhaps most importantly, a very proud cat daddy. So today we're talking about why your job title isn't your identity, why career success isn't always about climbing the ladder, and how to build financial security beyond a single paycheck, creating businesses with purpose, and what it's really like being a part of the LGBTQ plus community in Singapore and across Asia. I know you're going to walk away with a completely different perspective on careers, purpose, and building a life that works for you. So Malcolm, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thanks for having me.
So before we jump in, and you referenced this before we started recording, let's start with an energy check-in. I know it's very late for you where you are. Excuse me. On a scale from 1 to 10, how is your energy right now, and what's contributing to that number?
Probably say about 8. So as you mentioned, I'm halfway around the world. So now, as we are recording now, it's around just past midnight. But I also kind of prepped myself. I went to the gym earlier, so I kind of also pump up with all the endorphins, and I'm really happy to be on the show today and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that I finally have someone to interview and chat with from your part of the world. I actually have never chatted with anyone.
Thank you.
So I'm excited. All right. So you've had careers, as I mentioned, in HR, hospitality, education, communications, investor relations, entrepreneurship, and somehow they all fit together. When did you realize you were more than the title printed on your business card?
Wow. So we kind of really jumping in right now into the question, huh? I think it's actually kind of interesting that you really ask this question and deep dive really down. So I think for the very first part of my career, it's really kind of like finding my identity, right? I mean, back then, we're talking about almost 20 years ago, where career coaching or, finding purpose or exploring different career path is not really heard of. So I would be someone that you used to be classified as a job hopper. And these days, we just say that someone is exploring their passion, their careers and interests, right? So I think I spent the good first 2 to 3 years of my career really trying to figure things out. What do I really want to do? I mean, in Singapore, we have somewhat like a vocational system where Germany is having, or in US context, we pretty much like a community college, right? So after you chosen something where you can potentially work, the next step is, do you really want to work in this particular role that you studied for, right? And when we were maybe 17, 18, whatever we chose could have been influenced by our friends, our family, or, maybe whatever we see on social media, right? So is we kind of like trying to understand. And if you're talking about like 20 years ago, there isn't a lot of references. There's a lot of careers now that isn't even created, right? So I guess I was also kind of fortunate to get into an industry, which is hospitality, and being exposed to different sort of career opportunity within hospitality. Traditionally, people would think about it as more of operational, client-facing, guest relations, housekeeping kind of role or food and beverage kind of role. But there's a lot of back office roles like HR and marketing that people don't talk about. Sometimes you might see a gap going past my screen right now. Sorry for those of you listening. That's the reason why I put specifically my identity as a proud cat dad. Just in case, for those of you not watching the video, sometimes my cat does make a guest appearance. So as I was saying, it's really about finding that. I'm really glad that in the first few years of my early career, I get to explore and to kind of know what I wanted. And that leads me to kind of specialize in marketing as a career. And I did really well for that, all the way into management role, into managing a regional team, right? But sometimes we thought that we know what our role is, and in between things happen. That's where I kind of experienced burnout, mental health issues like depressions and addiction kind of stuff, right? And that's really where I need to hit a hard pause and question myself. So what's my identity now? Like, am I just a really good hotel marketer? Or what's my identity beyond? And if I really like to do the things I like to do and good at, and now I can't do it anymore, or I have to take a step back, what is the next step for me? So I think that kind of lets me to think about again, what do I want to do? Because I think in corporate, sometimes we thought that I like, for example, in the areas of marketing, right? Doing marketing and managing people to do marketing in management can be really different, right? So I kind of have to understand, okay, so I really like to do the things I like to do, but I don't like to manage people. But there are certain aspects of people management that I like. What I don't like is to manage my bosses, hotel owners, attending meetings where I just feel that it could all have been just an email. So I can kind of have to take a step back and say, hey, I really like the investing in people's part, the developing of people. So I think that's where I kind of take a step and say, hey, I think I have built enough credibility on my own that I feel that I should be able to kind of venture out as a solopreneur first, someone who's self-employed to kind of explore. And I think the easiest step for me would be that if you are not doing whatever you're doing, then it's easier to teach people whatever you were doing previously. So I spent the first few part of my career in learning and development, adult education, teaching people how to do the things I used to do, which is digital marketing, content creations, and so on. So yeah, I think that's a very long answer to the question that you have asked about identity.
So what would you say to someone whose entire identity is wrapped up in their career?
Well, I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, end of the day, all of us have to have some kind of identity to start with. And I think as LGBT folks, we work really hard, especially for some of us in the areas of our career, and that kind of became our identity. But however, having said that, what is dangerous is that what if we were suddenly have to lose it in my case, which is maybe in the case of a health related issue, or should we decide to retire? Then what's next for us? Because I think in my career conversations with a lot of mid-career individuals or people post-corporate, the moment that we only attach our identity to a particular role, like I'm the CEO of a company, I'm the regional marketing director, then what's really next for us, right? So I'm also part of this group called Aging Forward, which is a group for LGBT folks aged 40 plus and above. And this is also something that came about because we do have people who are maybe in their 50s or 60s that were on the way to exit out from the corporate career. And they were sharing that it's kind of a feeling of loss. They're not quite sure what they're doing, having to be needing to re-explore again their hobby, their interest, maybe taking on a different kind of role to rediscover what they like to do.
So we've been taught that success means climbing upward, but you've taken a very different path. You've pivoted between corporate entrepreneurship and even returned to corporate after running your own business. What did those experiences teach you about what success actually looks like?
At the end of the day, all of us define success differently. We define success as cliche as it sounds in our very own terms. I think if you speak to different generations, like for example, if you speak to someone who's Gen Z versus someone like me who's a millennial, we have very different versions of success, or even someone who's right now in their 50s or 60s, right? In Singapore, it's kind of interesting. So in this part of Asia, we used to think that success is being measured by the 5 different C's. So it stands for cash, credit card, country club membership, car, and condominium, which is kind of like a private property, right? But I think these days, a lot of things has been moving away from whatever that's physical and material into things like peace of mind, whether you have time to spend with your family, things like your mental health and so on, right? So I think these days things have changed quite a lot. It could be because that with internet, people start to realize that, hey, there's actually another style of living. Maybe it could be because of rising costs of living, the layoff, retrenchment, and or whatever the world is happening right now, right? Like if I were to invest so much time and effort in my job right now, well, at the press of the button, someone may tell me that, hey, my job is no longer around. So I think that really forces people to rethink, hey, is my job really worth it?
Right. I agree. And it is very interesting to see how each generation thinks about success. And I have had the opportunity to chat with some Gen Z, and they're not about being at the top of the company. They're just fine being where they are. And when you look at that, it could definitely cause some problems in the future when they're supposed to be the top execs in a company and they don't want to be there. Now, I'm not saying there aren't Gen Z out there that might want to be at that point, but the overall I've learned is that they're just fine being the worker and maybe a manager, but overall they're kind of fine at being just the basic, I wouldn't say basic, but your typical employee that you think of in a corporate environment. But
Yeah, so
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, if I could just add on. Having said that, defining your own success in your own term doesn't mean that I doesn't go through certain struggle. Like right now, I would wish that I have a nicer corporate title instead of being the investor relations manager, which some people thinks that it sounds pretty great. But then sometimes when I look at my peers, they have nicer sounding titles like VP of something else or director of something else, right? So that's where sometimes I find myself subtly have to mention that, hey, I actually report to my CEO. So my role is actually not that junior, given that it's kind of a flat hierarchy. But I think it's also a lot about being at peace with myself, to understand that a lot of time title really doesn't carry a lot of things. I had trade-off in the sense where I get to have work-life balance. In fact, my company or my boss have this very interesting culture where she will tend to ask us to go home earlier. She was like, it's a slow day. Why not everyone just get home earlier today? We do have our peak period, especially when it comes to things like the annual report seasons, that we could be working 12 to 14 hours a day consecutively, or sometimes even through the weekends as well. So I think understanding that balance. And for me, wise, as I've mentioned at the beginning, there's many roles that I'm actually having besides my full-time job. Having the extra hours allows me to invest back into my business to start building my side hustles, allows me to volunteer, allows me to do a lot of other things that I otherwise couldn't.
Very true. Yeah, I would agree. So looking back and all of that you've done and are currently doing, was there a career decision that seemed risky at the time but became one of your best?
That's a really good question. In fact, I would say that there are two turning points in terms of my career. One, that would be 7 years ago when I decided to leave corporate and to kind of venture out, to start things on my own. It was really scary because I have no network. It's a completely different industry, training industry. But thankfully, I do have networks and people that I know along the way. And somehow referrals leads to another referrals when you do things well. And interestingly enough, there was a period of the pandemic as well. So for those of you who are probably listening from outside of Singapore, Singapore has this really strong education system, and education has always been seen as a safety net to the society. So our version of workers' rights is we send you for upskilling and training. So in such a times like a pandemic situation where people are losing job, the government of Singapore, what they have done is they invest a lot into courses, skills, trainings, and so on. So I was really kind of lucky to be in a position where the industry was actually booming, and I was in one of those very rare industry where it's doing really well during the pandemic. right? But of course, pandemic doesn't last. The fundings and subsidies for training doesn't last as well. So towards the end, as we started to open up, everyone returns back to work. I started to kind of grapple with the reality that do I still want to carry on in this industry, which I kind of doing well and I kind of like it. And I say that I did manage to carry on for a few more years. And then for that period, I have always been asking myself, is this something that I really want to do? There's a lot of people in the industry, they were kind of doing it as a freelance, as a post corporate career. And they were saying that, hey, I think you're a bit too young to be doing this as like a semi-retirement role. And I kind of really miss what I used to do. Right. So I think a year ago, and I was kind of like looking out and see maybe I want to go back as a full-time role. And I was kind of really specifically looking for full-time learning and development manager or HR kind of role. And out of the blue, a friend of mine just said, "Hey, didn't you say you're looking for a job? And I do have a role that I thought might be something that you're looking for, which is actually kind of like my current role right now, which is in investor relations. So you think that so there's two very interesting things there. Number one, I am someone who is trained in communications and have done public relations, corporate comms, and so on. So investor relations is kind of like a more specialized field of it. And going into the interview, all I know is that I probably know about 20% of the job, but it's not a field that's totally new to. But on the other hand, I know that there is this 80% of gap that I kind of risking my career and my past network and my business that I to jump into a complete field. I think it's both exciting and also scary at the same time. I wonder for the first half a year whether I'm in the right role, whether my boss will ask me the week after and say, hey, can we have a talk? Maybe you want to talk about your performance and stuff. Somehow I managed to survive my first year and managed to not just survive but thrive, right? So I think there's also this part where we do sometimes want to let people know that it's okay to just jump as long as you know what you're looking for. I think the thing here is for someone to do a 180-degree switch in something that they totally do not know of. Then I think the risk is a lot higher. For me, I do know that there is this 80% gap that I need to close on, but I also know how do I close off this 80% that's needed for my current group. So I sort of have a roadmap for myself that I can work towards.
Very nice. So, how do you personally know when it's time for your next pivot?
I think you know when it happens. It's kind of like dating someone. How do you know when it's the right time? I think we can only work on ourselves, right? It's just kind of like dating as well. Like you can only work on yourself and wait for our Mr. Right to come about. It's kind of funny because investor relations is a role that I have thought about. So 7 years ago, after I left my role in hotel marketing, I was just telling myself that, hey, hospitality is too fast paced. And it's being scrutinized, right? Like you go and stay in the hotel, you will leave a review, and that review sometimes depends on your mood for the day. Do you have a quarrel with your boyfriend, or did you really enjoy it? Someone paid for your vacation and you leave, a very good review. So I was kind of jokingly telling people that it would be a lot better for me if I were to sell products, right? Like if I were to sell a can of Coca-Cola, for example, or Pepsi. The day when you drink it and tomorrow you drink it, the feeling is kind of the same. And no one ever goes to Google to leave a review about the can of Coke that I've drank, right? So I was just thinking, okay, I really like to do communication related, but I feel that hospitality industry is a lot more challenging. So what are the roles that I could consider and maybe a bit slowing down in terms of the expectation? So there were actually two roles that I have thought of. One is internal comms, and then I have friends who told me that hey, it's really going to have no visibility. If in the future an executive search personnel may not be able to understand what you have done. And there's also another role called investor relations that I've been really keen to go in. However, it is also a very specialized field, even within the finance and investment industry. So you kind of need a connection. You kind of need to have like a track record. I would say that about 70 to 80% of people who are handling investor relations They did it because they were previously handling financial related stuff. And then it's sort of like a portfolio that was being added upon. Then, of course, the other 20% of professionals in my role are people like myself who is communication trained. Then the challenge for us would really be to demonstrate that we understand about the financial aspects of stuff, the data that how do we tell the story from a data point of angle in terms of the health point of the companies and so on, right? So yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Well,
so
so
one thing
one
you
thing you
mentioned when we
mentioned when we
first
first
talked, and I
talked,
love
and I love
this, is that
this,
you
is that you
said
said
people should
people
think
should
about
think about
building their
building their
safety net
safety
before
net
they
before they
actually need it.
actually need
That's
it.
a
That's a
very
very
powerful
powerful
mindset.
mindset.
What does
What does
building
building
financial and
financial
career
and career resilience
resilience look like
look like
today?
So again, this is something that's from my personal experiences as well. So how did I kind of get into trading and the development is also something that I've been doing for quite a while on the side as a volunteer. So very early on, when I doesn't have so many responsibilities and commitment to my role, I actually took on a course as a ESL teacher. So I actually have a TESOL certification to teach English as a second language. And so, and also at the same time, I was actually pretty much involved in Toastmasters. So it's because of these two so-called resources that I had, when I decided that, hey, I'm going to take a step back from hospitality marketing, what is the next thing that I need to do? So I kind of asked people in my club, Toastmasters club, that, hey, I'm kind of taking a career break now. Do you have any kind of assignments for me? And two of my friends came up and said, hey, there's actually English language course that actually looking for people, but do you have a certification? And I was like, hey, funny enough, I do have a certification, right? So that's kind of how I got started in the education and learning development. And then, of course, along the way, people were saying, do you know of anyone who is good in digital marketing? We're going to create a course on that. Would you like to? So again, I volunteer myself for it, right? So I'm always a big believer that besides work, besides going to the gym, for gay men especially, I think we should always invest in another interest or something that potentially we could make money in. For some of us, might be posting content on the social media, whether it's those that require paid subscription or not. But I think it's a good skills, right, to kind of work on. So you never know when it be. Or for some of us, would be to probably learn how to do graphic designs. I mean, of course, these days with AI, a lot of things could be a lot easier being done, right? Or really training people, how to do agentic AI as well. So I think those are really good skills for us to really think about in this time of digital disruptions.
So, what do
So
you
what do you
think
think
people,
people,
sorry, let me
sorry,
ask
let
that
me
again.
ask,
What
what
mistakes do you
mistakes do
think
you
people
think people
make
make
when
when
trying to
trying to
start
start
something on the
something on
side?
I think there are two very different school of thought. One is people who doesn't plan, and one is people who plan a lot and and get analysis paralysis and they didn't do anything about it, right? So I think the philosophy that I live by is that progression over perfection, right? So it's always okay to do something, iterate it, improve on it, and then we see how it goes, right? So a very good example would be how my pet business gets started. So as I was training people in digital marketing, content, and social media, I realized I can't always be falling back on the projects I had done in the corporate settings 2 years ago. I kind of have to do something, start something to just show people, right? Even though it might be an account with less than 10 followers, but for me, it's kind of like an experimental project for me to teach people how to get started in terms of influencer marketing, in terms of content creations and so on, right? Uh, and then at the same time, I also realized that I actually have no products to sell or services that I want to market. So I kind of look around, me being resourceful. I realized I have two cats with me and I'm a believer. It's a very Asian belief, right? Like everyone in the family has to contribute, right? So I kind of go up to my cats and say, hey, you guys got to start earning for your treats now. So I started filming videos of them. Then and suddenly we get brands approaching us and say, hey, can we do like a contract deal? We sponsor you with some products, and can you do some content for us? And before we know it, we kind of start to build a following, right? And that kind of leads to having a community. And I have to ask myself and say, hey, so what's next? Why don't I start selling things on my own rather than me promoting things for other people, right? And so one thing leads to another. So I think a lot of times people may think that I have to have like a full business plan. I didn't know what I'm going to do. I need to do a lot of planning. Things are so difficult. And then halfway through, they got scared and they didn't carry on, right? Then of course, on the other hand, you have people who just do without improvising, without improving, and then they just doing the same thing again, right? So I think the sweet spot is to really progress as we go along, as we work towards perfection.
I like that. And I would say it does help to have things planned out, or at least some type of plan. I would agree, because even when I started my coaching business, I knew that I had to have an overall business plan. I had to know how to put things into place. For me, I had to make sure that I guess I didn't have to make sure, but I chose to make sure that I was certified in coaching, so that it's not required, at least not here in the United States, but I feel like it gives you a little bit more credibility when you have those certifications, because then people are like, okay, well, if he spent the time to get certified, there must be a reason to look at him into the coaching, to possibly look him as to hire him as a coach. But so how do you balance like the ambition you had with starting your company without burning yourself out?
Very interesting as well to think about this. So I actually have two separate companies, and both of them gave me very different experience. So when I first started out as a trainer, as someone who developed courses and so on, it's actually a limited partnership. I think over here we call it LLP, limited partnership. I think over on your end it's called LLC. So it's kind of the same
Correct,
thing.
yeah.
So the other partner that I have is actually a sleeping partner, which is actually my mom, because I have to have another name into the company, but it's pretty much a one-man kind of business, right? I like that I have freedom to do the things I can do without answering to anyone. But at the same time, it's kind of tiring, like me having to market my services, design the course, and teach the course. It's a lot of work. I mean, John, you would know yourself when you have this wonderful podcast among many other things you're doing, right? So when the opportunity came for me to start another business, something really different, which is the pet product business, I say, hey, why don't I take on this challenge? And I tell myself, hey, previously I was doing everything on my own. This time around, I don't get people involved. I'm gonna have business partner, right? And it's true enough that many hands does make light work, but at the same time, many voices does make decisions a lot harder, right? So with my pet business, I have three other people that I have to work with. So I'm the majority shareholder, and I have a second majority shareholder. In fact, recently we were trying to talk about product expansion and new product development, and we do have some kind of challenge because different people have different opinion. At the same time, we also have minority shareholders. You would think that everyone who's in the business itself will have the same kind of commitment as you. But no, the reality is that it's not. I do find that for the other two minority shareholders, they're kind of like the employees that you hire, that you have to push them. And if you ask them certain things, they will do it for you. But they don't really take the initiative, right? Not someone that I will expect, or maybe that's my own expectation of myself, that if I'm the business owner, I would take them. So I think there's always pros and cons with working with people or working with.
I would agree. So let's keep talking about your pet business. So what I love is that it's connected to community and purpose. So what inspired you to build something that creates connection instead of just simply generating income?
So I think that also kind of has to do with the nature of being a cat owner. So unlike dog owners who get your daily walks, get to socialize with other dogs and other dog owners, cat owner doesn't really have the luxury. We do have the luxury of not going out picking after our pet's poop during winter,
Correct.
or in my case, during a rainy day, right? But a lot of times being a cat owner is you're pretty much doing that in isolation, right? And being someone who's really new to cat husbandry, I found myself finding people that I kind of have to ask questions, right? And then when I built my social media, I realized that maybe I can start to share information and get information from people. And I think that's where I realized that building a community is really important, whether it's a digital community or offline community. That's where informations kind of get shared. And I think that's also something that I personally advocate for as a marketer itself. So I do get to talk to a lot of college students who are aspiring marketing students. And the one thing I always tell people is that content creation nowadays, you can do it very easily. You know, you can just go to Claude, to ChatGPT or whichever generative AI tools that you're using to create content. It's very easy to keep pushing out to other people. In fact, we have a fatigue in terms of consuming content, right? That sometimes you want to take a break from it. But however, what keeps people from back to you and buying from you or getting services from you is a sense of the community, which is kind of like what John, you're trying to create here through the podcast, right? This sense of
Oh, yeah.
community that I know that I'm not being alone, right? So I think it's increasingly being important as we advance in technology, as a lot of all these production creation works get easier. People doesn't just want to consume, but people wants to be able.
So let's talk about obviously purpose. It's great to have your purpose, follow your purpose. But as you know, it's not just about making money. So, how has your definition of purpose changed over the years?
I think I kind of fortunate to be exposed to volunteerism at a very young age. In fact, it's actually part of our school curriculum to kind of volunteer certain hours, maybe 4 hours and so on. It's true that I realized that there are many fun things that I get to do as well beyond whatever that we do in schools. There's also many people or types of beneficiaries that we could help out as well. So I think one of the most defining groups that have taught me about the sense of purpose will really be I actually do volunteers in the prisons, and I've been doing that for actually the past 10 years. So it really helps you to give a certain perspective. So this is where things kind of potentially gets a little bit dark. So when I was kind of struggling with my mental health, I was also struggling with addictions as well. And within the confinements incarcerated populations, a lot of them in Singapore was actually there because of drug offenses and so on, right? So I think having been someone who have recovered, but yet with a lived experience of it, when I went back to the prison and volunteer, it allows me to kind of share with both mates, our participants, as well as fellow volunteers, how things are like in terms of seeing our life in a very different manner. So that actually lets me to think about making a difference and how a life can have a purpose beyond just simply work or simply going to the gym and post another selfie of ourselves on Instagram.
So true. So let's talk about being LGBTQ plus in Singapore and the broader Asian community. So I think one of the things that our listeners are really going to appreciate is hearing a perspective that they don't often get. So what has your experience been like navigating your career, community, and identity as an LGBTQ plus professional in Singapore?
So I think in Singapore, there's actually many different tiers. I would say that in general, we are kind of like a don't ask, don't tell kind of policy, but in a very good way. So we have never, there have been times where we advocate, that we push for rights as well. So in Singapore, we actually do have kind of like a gay rights or gay parade, but we call it Pink Dot. Pink being the color of our flags is red and white. So if you mix them together, you actually get pink. We don't do a parade. We do a picnic. So Pink Dot is pretty much a picnic. So at the very beginning, the organizers of the Pink Dot Parade decided that instead of it being confrontational, instead of it being something that we want to really push for it, we actually go through the route of love is love and the we being seen as just another part of the society, as another part of the family. And very early on, we actually leverage onto the power of our allies to tell our stories and say, hey, my friend is gay, lesbian, bi or trans, and that's pretty much okay, right? And through many years of I won't really call this advocacy work, but we kind of do try to change in terms of policy. And then in 2022, we finally get the Penal Code 377A, which is the anti-gay laws being repealed. And it's kind of interesting. You think that the next step be to advocate for gay marriage, which is what people usually do in the States, right? The Singapore government is actually saying that, hey, you know what, I'm going to give you guys gay rights. You guys can exist not as criminals, but as equal citizens. However, we're going to redefine, or rather, we're going to specifically define in our constitution that marriage is between a man and woman. Right. So it's kind of like one step forward and two steps back. So I think we need a community that is a lot of debate and say that, hey, did we win the battle, but we lose the war? Like, do we make some progress and now we do, right? And there's also many other aspects of things that's not really spoken about, such as sexual education in school, such as the rights of LGBT worker when it comes to discrimination. So it's also very recently that, in fact, right now as we speak, Singapore government is also trying to legislate in terms of our fair legislation framework. It's kind of like our version of diversity, equity, and inclusivity laws.
Okay.
But however, it specifically did not cover rights of the individual LGBTQ individual. So it does cover if you have certain gender, religion, race, and even things such as mental health and caregiving duty. But it did not cover LGBTQ. So I think that's also where the community also start to question our leaders here and say, hey, shouldn't that also be included as part of the greater anti-discrimination? So I think a lot of times it's very easy for people to forget that at this part of the world in Asia, progress is a lot different. I think a lot of times is about just getting our voices heard. A lot of times it's just being feel that we are included. And I think it's also that in Asia we are a lot more collective as a society than individualistic. So I think a lot of times it's really like, okay, you can live and let live. As long as there's harmony within the group, you can be gay, we can accept you. You can still put your rainbow flag out there, just don't wave it in my face. And sometimes it's also being understanding that, hey, my lifestyle is my lifestyle. I can still practice it, but I just don't have to shove it into people's face for them to accept me as it is. And sometimes that's okay for everyone.
I like that. I like how where you started talking about you don't have a parade, but you have like a picnic, which I actually is actually not horrible. It's a great way to bring people together.
Yeah, and you get food.
And you exactly, and you get food, which I love that because I understand the parade. I've been to parades, at least here, especially here in Colorado for the last decade, and I love it. I love seeing all the different organizations that come out to support the LGBTQ plus community. And it's really, I don't know, it's really cool to see it because I didn't see that before I moved out to Colorado. We didn't have a parade where I grew up in Kansas City, and they do now. But I feel that living in Colorado, especially in the Denver area, Denver is very progressive in their support of the LGBTQ plus community, and so it's nice to see that is still strong, And I love that over in Singapore that they're accepting you as, as gay or LGBTQ plus, but the marriage thing, I get it. It took a while though for it to to be legal here. So, I mean, even in my state of Colorado, a civil union was actually was passed in Colorado prior to it being legal for the entire country. So you could actually get married here prior to the federal government saying, okay, we're going to accept that. So keep going on and keep going with the all the different, potential misconceptions. What are misconceptions people outside of Asia, like myself, have about LGBTQ plus life there?
Well, I really can't say so for every single country in Asia because Asia is really very diverse, right?
Right.
But I think in general, most of the Asian countries share certain characteristics, especially for some of the countries that are not as liberal in general. So in Asia, usually Thailand and Taiwan are seen as one of the more progressive regions over here. Singapore kind of, I won't say it's very conservative, but I would say it's somewhere in between. So it's interesting. So um, a lot of times, I think also Singapore has this very bad rap of us being a very strict, law-abiding society. That if you were caught littering or even jaywalking, you kind of get into trouble with the authorities. I won't say that it's not true, but I'll say that there are times where I have done my fair share of all these petty, I won't quite crimes, but petty activities and nothing really quite happens to me, right? So, what I'm trying to say here is that in Asia, a lot of times it's about the harmony, and I think to a certain extent, people who are not LGBT, they are aware that we do exist and they do respect our right to exist as well. But of course, at the same time, there's also a reason why Pride is not 12 months in the entire year, but at 1 month, right? So I think the other thing that we are doing here is also that we try to be Pride, not just a 1 day kind of activity. So the entire month of June is actually also so we have Pink Dot, which is the giant picnic that we have, and it is also a reason why it's a picnic is because that the park where we have our picnic is the only place where you legally can protest or do any form of political stuff going on, right? And gays being gays. It's like, hey, if you're gonna protest, might as well we sit down and have some gays at the same time, right? So that's kind of how the pink picnic started. And then we realized that beyond that, what else can we do? So we actually created Pink Fest. So Pink Fest is a month-long celebrations of disability campaign. So it ranges from fashion show, inclusive fashion shows to movie screening, to career fairs, and anyone who has interest to bring forth an event for the community. So I think 2 years ago, I organized a LGBTQ pet owners meetup. So and also in
fun.
very fun, right? And in the area of inclusivity, I make it a point to say that any fur, color, shape, size, species are really welcome, right? In all forms of inclusivity, and we get all sorts of animals, pets for the gathering.
Nice. I love that. That's awesome. So what can the global LGBTQ plus community learn from one another instead of assuming that every experience is the same, in your opinion?
I would say that first of all, there's a lot of things that we do learn from the Western parts of the world as well. I mean, US and also from Europe, right? I mean, Stonewall is such powerful incident that it really starts to the whole snowballing of people fighting for their rights and people in different parts of the world being inspired by it. Right. What I really do hope that people outside of Singapore, outside of Asia, do understand is that in Asia, a lot of times it's not just about the individual, but it's also about the individual role in the society, and that also goes about being responsible, right? So, what does this form of social responsibility looks like, right? So again, I can be who I am, I can wear whatever I am, but to force people to accept that, hey, or to say that, hey, I allow you to do so, might be something that we may not have it over here. I think also at the same time, it's also being comfortable and confident in ourselves to say that, hey, if no one's so-called going to celebrate or say, give me the permission, I will allow myself to do so, as long as I know that there's some kind of boundaries. And these boundaries is really very invisible. You're really not sure how things are like. So a very good example is right now in my current situation in my office. My boss and I are kind of like bestie. She being the female CEO, very progressive. She lived in different parts of the world, in Europe, in New York, in Hong Kong, and back to Singapore. So I will share with her, who's the latest man I'm dating or going out with. But with the rest of my colleagues, they're they're straight men. So sometimes people say, hey, you should just come up to them. But I find that sometimes if I were to do so, I have to explain a lot of things to them, which I just feel that I don't want to, because I think I didn't want to engage certain parts of my life with my colleagues. And I think at the same time, what I do get is my colleagues get my quirks. They get that I have a handbag that I carry with me to lunch. They get that I do kind of funny things in office, which may or may not be gay specific. Just the fact that we recognize each other for who they are beyond sexual orientation, beyond nationality, because my office is kind of diverse as well. I think that is very important. That acceptance is more important than saying that, hey, you have to accept me as an LGBT person. I think accept me as who I am, no matter religion, race, nationality, or sexual orientation.
Nice. All right. Well, this is kind of my favorite part of my podcast that I do, and it's my rapid fire questions. So, Malcolm, let's have some fun. All right. And these are short answers. And if you have to think, that's okay. But all right. Coffee, tea, or bubble tea?
Wine.
Wine. All right. Okay. What kind of wine? White or red?
Mostly white.
Okay. Nice. Okay. What's your favorite thing that your cats have ever done?
What's my favorite thing? Cuddling up to me. We have a nighttime ritual where one of them will be under my armpit and the other will be on the side of my body. So I kind of have to like pet them until they feel happy enough to go to sleep. Then I can go to sleep.
Nice. Okay. If money wasn't a factor, what's one business that you'd start tomorrow?
I would start a cat hotel where you don't just choose a room. You can choose the cat that you want to bring to the room for the night.
Very nice. That's interesting. I mean, why not? Really? Okay. What's one city everyone should visit at least once?
Well, I would actually say Queenstown, New Zealand. I did my working holidays in New Zealand, and I think it is a very underrated country that people don't really think about, and often overshadowed by Australia or the other countries as well. So yes, Queenstown, New Zealand.
I love that. Okay. One word that your friends would use to describe you.
I would say Sunny, which also happens to be my pseudonym when I didn't want to give off my real name to people. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So last question overall. So Malcolm, if someone listening today feels stuck, maybe they're questioning their career, their identity, or whether they're capable of creating something more meaningful, what's one message you'd want to leave them with before we wrap up?
I think the final message I would want to share to people is that you don't have to follow someone else's definition of success. Some of us are late boomers. We may take a little while more to discover who we are. Some of us may have achieved success and experience that we're all on this journey, and it's really nice to discover what's things for us. So be open to the next adventure that life has in store for us.
I love that. That's great advice. I agree with that 100%. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Malcolm, this has been honestly a very refreshing conversation. I love that you've reminded us that careers don't have to follow just one straight line. that success isn't measured by job titles alone, and that purpose can be built one intentional step at a time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if today's conversation resonated with you, make sure that you connect with Malcolm on LinkedIn. I promise you'll enjoy following his work and the communities he's building. And of course, if today's episode encouraged you, please subscribe to this podcast, Empowered and Out. Leave a review and share this episode with someone who's trying to figure out what's next in their career. And of course, finally, if you are feeling stuck, disconnected, or unsure about your next move professionally, I would love to help. Through my Empowered Career Transformation Program, I help professionals move from career confusion to clarity, confidence, strategy, and aligned action. So until next time, remember, you are more than your job title, your career doesn't define your worth, and your next chapter may be the one that changes everything. We'll see you next time on Empowered and Out.